There is someone whose name you do not yet know, but that person already knows of you. They think of you without understanding why. They feel a strange familiarity, as if they have met you before, even though your paths have never crossed in the physical world. And do you know what is most remarkable? This is not a coincidence. It is not mere chance. It is the divine working behind the scenes in a way that human logic cannot explain. If you are watching this now, I need you to pay close attention, because what I am about to share may be the very confirmation you have been waiting for to not give up. You have been through difficult seasons, silent ones, invisible ones, times when it seemed no one saw you, no one valued you, no one recognized what you carried. And in those long nights you may have wondered, have I missed my moment? Have I been forgotten? The answer is no, you have not been forgotten. You are being prepared. And the proof of this is on its way, in the form of a connection that will change your life in ways you cannot yet fully imagine. A real person, with real influence, with real resources, but above all, with the spiritual sensitivity to recognize what is within you before you ever have to explain who you are. Stay with me until the end, because I will show you how this connection works on a spiritual level, what to do to not block it when it arrives, and why everything you have faced up to now was not wasted. It was qualification. Let's start at the beginning. The season of silence was not punishment. I need to tell you about one of the biggest traps the human mind falls into, interpreting silence as abandonment. Think about it. Do you know someone who went through a long period of waiting, of stillness, where things didn't move, doors didn't open, and it seemed everything was stuck? Perhaps you are in that place right now. Perhaps you have lived this for the last 2, 3, 5 years, and the feeling that remains is that something went wrong, that you made a mistake somewhere, that the promise will not be fulfilled. But let me show you something that sacred scripture confirms repeatedly. The greatest movements of the divine in a person's life have always been preceded by periods of attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Found silence. Joseph spent years in a prison he did not deserve to be in. Years, not months. And during all that time, from a human perspective, it seemed the promise had died. The dreams he had were still alive within him, but the reality around him was one of confinement, being forgotten, betrayal. And do you know what the divine was doing in that silence? It was refining Joseph's character so that he could sustain the weight of leading a nation without being destroyed by the honor. This detail is crucial, because there is a vast difference between receiving a great blessing and being capable of sustaining it. Many people pray for great connections, great opportunities, great influence, but they do not realize that without the corresponding character formation, those things become destruction, not blessing. An untended ego turns into arrogance when it meets power. An unhealed heart turns into manipulation when it meets influence. Unaddressed insecurity turns into self-sabotage when it meets opportunity. This is why the divine works in us before it works for us. And what happens in this season of silence? True humility is built, not the false performative humility of someone who pretends to need nothing, but the real humility that knows where it came from, that recognizes its limits, that is willing to learn, to serve, to wait. Discernment is sharpened. You learn to differentiate between who is with you and who is merely around you. You learn to listen more deeply, to perceive motivations, to see beyond appearances. And there is more. Identity is solidified. When you go through losses, betrayals, deep disappointments, and yet you choose to continue, to keep believing, to keep obeying, something takes root within you that no future storm can uproot. You discover who you are when no one is watching. And that is the version of you the divine is waiting to present to the world. If you are in a season like this now, do not interpret it as punishment. Interpret it as preparation, and know that the deeper the process, the greater the destiny being built. Now I want to show you something fascinating, something that blends what science understands about human connection with what spirituality teaches about God's movement in people's lives. Have you ever had that feeling of thinking about someone out of the blue for no apparent reason, and then soon after, they showed up? Or of feeling you needed to call someone specific without knowing why, and when you called, you discovered they were going through something difficult and needed exactly that contact? What the world calls intuition, what science studies as neural connectivity and synchronicity, spirituality calls the moving of the spirit, and they are not contradictory things. They are different descriptions of the same reality. When God decides to connect two people for a specific purpose, he begins moving in the spirit long before any physical encounter happens. One person starts thinking about the other. Without logical reason, the name surfaces, the image surfaces, the memory surfaces. The person tries to push that thought aside, but it comes back. That is the Spirit of God setting in motion a connection that hasn't happened yet in the physical plane, but is already confirmed in the spiritual plane. And on the side of the one who will receive this connection, what happens? Things begin to change subtly before the person arrives. Conversations you have start to change in tone. People around you begin to see you differently, as if something had shifted, but not necessarily because you did anything different. Opportunities that had passed you by begin to return with more urgency. Doors that seemed definitively closed begin to show cracks. This is not magic. It is not magical thinking. It is the spiritual principle that everything that exists in the physical plane was first established in the spiritual plane. When God confirms a change of positioning in your life, the environment around you begins to respond, even before you see the concrete evidence. But let me ask you a direct question now. Are you noticing these subtle changes in your life? Not necessarily big dramatic turns, small things, different conversations, feelings that something is moving, a strange stillness that, unlike other times, doesn't feel empty. It feels charged. If you are perceiving this, do not ignore it. This may be exactly the ground being prepared for what is coming. Now, I will describe something important to you. I won't give you a name, obviously, but I will describe the spiritual profile of this connection God is preparing for you. And as I speak, I want you to pay attention to your internal reactions. Because the Spirit confirms what is true within you. This person coming your way is not someone who will enter your life with noise. They will not appear trying to impress you, trying to demonstrate power or authority. In fact, when they first appear, you might not immediately recognize the magnitude of what is happening. They will see you differently. They won't keep consulting your history, your past mistakes, your previous failures. They won't keep asking other people what they think of you. They will see you directly, as if who you are in spirit is obvious to them, without need for external validation. This will feel strange at first, because you are used to being judged, used to having to prove yourself, used to people looking at what you've done before deciding what they think of you. And here comes someone who simply recognizes, as if what you carry is visible in a way that goes beyond credentials, beyond a resume, beyond external achievements. This person carries influence. It could be influence of relationships, of knowledge, of social standing, of financial resources, or a combination of all these. But the most important thing is not what they have. It is the spiritual sensitivity with which they carry what they have. Because there are people with many resources and zero discernment, and those bring confusion, not edification. The one coming for you has both resource and discernment. They have access, and they have wisdom to use that access with purpose. And when they identify you, they will want you to have access too, not out of performative generosity, but because there is a genuine recognition that your gifts and their resources complement each other in a way neither could achieve alone. And here is something very important I need to tell you now, because this could save you from a serious mistake. This person may not look like what you expected. You might have a picture in your head of what the connection that will change your life would be like. You might have an imagined profile, a context, an origin, and when this person appears, they may come from a place completely different from that. They may have a life trajectory that doesn't resemble anything you would consider a source of blessing. God is saying through this message, do not judge the vessel, discern the mission. Blessings that arrive wrapped exactly as we expected are usually creations of our own imagination, not divine movement. God's movement almost always surprises. It almost always comes from where it wasn't being expected. That is why discernment is so much more important than hasty judgment. This is the question I hear most from people when I talk about purpose and divine calling. And it almost always comes loaded with insecurity, with doubt, with a deep belief that there are more deserving, more capable, more prepared people. You were not chosen because you are perfect. You were chosen because you are aligned. But what does it mean to be aligned? Alignment is not the absence of flaws. It is not a life without mistakes. It is not an immaculate record of correct decisions. Alignment is a matter of the heart's direction. It is the willingness to keep walking towards something greater than yourself, even when the path is not clear. It is the repeated choice of obedience, even when obedience exacts a high price. It is the refusal to become bitter in the face of betrayals. It is the capacity to forgive not because people deserve it, but because you refuse to let them have power over your destiny. This is the kind of alignment God recognizes. And it is the kind of thing that doesn't appear on a resume, doesn't appear on social media, doesn't appear in any formal presentation. It only appears in the spirit. And that is exactly why the person coming for you will be able to see it. Because they themselves have that sensitivity. You went through disappointments that could have made you cynical, and they didn't. That is qualification. You were betrayed by people you trusted, and yet you chose not to completely close your heart to new connections. That is qualification. You faced seasons when you needed help and didn't receive it, and yet you chose to help when you could. That is qualification. You questioned, you cried. You had nights when your faith was hanging by a thread. And the next day you continued. That is qualification. It is not the absence of struggles that qualifies someone for a divine connection. It is the way that person goes through the struggles and what emerges on the other side of those crossings, a forged identity, a tested character, a faith that is not naive but real. God will not use you in spite of what you went through. He will use you because of what you went through. I need to pause here to talk about something that can be a turning point in how you relate to this blessing that is arriving. There is a fundamental difference between needing to be rescued and needing to be recognized. And confusing these two things can lead you into a completely wrong relationship dynamic, even if the connection is genuinely divine. When you operate from a rescue mentality, you unconsciously position the other person above you. You become emotionally dependent on their recognition to feel valuable. You begin to yield more than you should, to diminish yourself more than is necessary, because deep down, you are grateful to have been saved. And the problem with this is that relationships built on this savior and saved dynamic are rarely sustainable or healthy. But when you operate from a recognition mentality, the dynamic is completely different. You know who you are. You know what you carry. You know you have real, concrete value, independent of anyone's validation. And when someone arrives and recognizes that, you receive it with gratitude, but without servitude. You connect as an equal, as a partner, as someone who also has something precious to offer to that relationship. And guess which of the two mentalities attracts healthy divine connections? The second one, because God is not sending you this person to rescue you. He is sending them to recognize you. There is a huge difference. Rescue implies you are lacking, that you are deficient, that you need someone to complete you. Recognition implies you already carry something complete within you, and that another person with spiritual sensitivity will be able to see it and honor it. So let me ask you directly, how is your perception of yourself at this moment? Can you say, even in a low voice, even if still trembling a little, that you have value, that what you carry is real, that you deserve to be seen not because you are perfect, but because you are genuine? If you have difficulty saying yes to this, I want you to know part of the work God is doing in you now, in this season of preparation, is exactly that. It is to consolidate in you an identity that does not need external approval to be real. It is to build within you a certainty that does not fluctuate based on who is looking at you or ignoring you in each phase of your life. Because the wealth and influence of the person arriving cannot intimidate you. They should not intimidate you, and they will not intimidate you if you know who you are. It's time for the most practical moment of our talk, and perhaps the most important. Because it is not enough to understand that a divine connection is on the way, you need to be positioned to receive it without sabotaging it. There are behaviors, mentalities, and spiritual patterns that function as invisible blockers, and I want to show you the main ones so you can identify and work on them before this connection arrives. The first blocker is unresolved bitterness. Bitterness is one of the greatest enemies of destiny. It doesn't always appear in an obvious way. It often disguises itself as realism, as caution, as I just learned from life. But inside, it operates as a filter that distorts everything. It makes you see bad intention where it doesn't exist. It makes you close doors before they are fully open. It makes you pull away from people who could be exactly what you needed, because unconsciously, you are expecting to be disappointed again. If you carry hurt from past betrayals, from relationships that broke, from people who left you behind, and look, it would be dishonest to say those pains aren't real. They are. You need to work on that actively. I'm not talking about pretending it didn't hurt. I'm talking about doing the work of forgiveness, not for the person who hurt you, but for your own freedom. Because bitterness locks you in the past exactly when your future is knocking at the door. The second blocker is comparison. In today's world, with social media showing everyone's edited life, comparison has become a silent epidemic, and it kills purpose in a treacherous way because it doesn't kill suddenly. It slowly drains your energy. It makes you feel you are behind, that others arrived first, that you missed the bus. But God's timing is not comparable. What is being built in your life has a unique architecture which cannot be evaluated by the progress standard of any other person. The person who arrived before you at the same age is not necessarily ahead of you. They are simply on another path, and your path has a destination no other can reach, precisely because it is yours. The third blocker is the need for control. When life has disappointed us several times, we develop self-preservation strategies. One of the most common is the need to control everything, to know in advance how things will work, to not expose ourselves before having all the guarantees. And from a human point of view, it makes sense. It is protection, but from a spiritual point of view, this need for control blocks exactly the type of connection that cannot be planned, that doesn't come wrapped with an instruction manual, that requires faith to be received. The connection God is sending you will ask for a level of openness that may be uncomfortable. It will appear in a way you did not control, at a moment you did not orchestrate, through a person who does not look like what you planned. And if you are not willing to let go of control, you might let it pass by without recognizing it. The fourth blocker, and perhaps the most subtle, is self-imposed unworthiness. It is the voice inside you that says, "This is not for me. People like me don't reach that level. I don't deserve that much. After everything I did, after everything that happened, who am I to receive something like this?" That voice is not yours. It was planted by experiences, by words from people who did not have enough spiritual vision to see who you really are. And it needs to be silenced with truth repeatedly until the truth is louder than the lie. The truth is, you were created with purpose. What you carry within you has eternal value. You are not disqualified by your past, and you deserve to receive what God prepared for you, not because you earned it, but because He decided. I will give you now some concrete signs that indicate this connection is approaching. They are not superstitions. They are spiritual patterns that repeat in the experience of people who have gone through this kind of turnaround. The first sign is a positive restlessness with no clear cause. You begin to feel that something is about to happen, that something is moving, but you can't identify exactly what. It is different from negative anxiety, which paralyzes and oppresses. This restlessness has a quality of expectation, of anticipation, like the eve of something good you don't yet know is arriving. The second sign is dreams or mental images of encounters, of conversations, of situations you haven't lived yet, but that seem familiar. It doesn't have to be a dramatic dream with apocalyptic visions. It can simply be waking up with the clear feeling that something has changed, even without knowing what. The third sign is changes in your social circle. Some people begin to drift away, not necessarily in a conflictual way, but organically, as if life were naturally separating what no longer fits with what is coming. And at the same time, new conversations begin to happen with people you may have known for a long time, but had never deepened in this way. The fourth sign is a renewed sense of purpose. After a long season where you were just surviving, you begin to remember why you started. You begin to feel again the calling you had within you, perhaps clearer than ever, as if the vision had come into focus after being blurry for a long time. The fifth sign is a peace that surpasses understanding, even if the external circumstances haven't changed yet. Even if the bank account still doesn't have the number you want to see. Even if the situation isn't resolved externally. There is a peace in the spirit that begins to settle, that cannot be explained by reason, but that is unmistakable for those who know it. If you are recognizing any of these signs in your life now, do not ignore them. Tune in to them. Correspond to them with prayer, with expectation, with a willingness to receive. There is a real danger that needs to be said here. And I say this with love and respect, because it is exactly the trap that destroys lives that were about to turn around. When a powerful connection arrives, it usually brings access. Access to resources, to environments, to people, to opportunities that were previously out of your reach. And this access is legitimate. It is a blessing. It is part of what God is providing. But access is not the same as purpose. There are people who receive great access and become so fascinated with the access itself that they lose sight of where that access should take them. They begin to use the resources to build something that impresses, that flaunts, that validates before others. But that has no direct relation to the calling that was being prepared in the years of silence. Access is the means, purpose is the destination. And the purpose, in your case, is not simply to move up materially in life, although that is also part of it. The purpose has to do with what you will do with the resources, with what you will build with the influence, with how many lives will be touched, because you received this connection and used it correctly. So when this person arrives, when the doors begin to open, always ask the question, is this leading me to where I was called? Is this expanding my capacity to serve the greater purpose? Or am I getting distracted by the shine of the access and forgetting the mission embedded in it? This question will save you from many detours. A divine connection is not one-sided. It will ask something of you as well. And I want to be honest about this, because it would be dishonest to paint this arrival as something purely passive, where you only receive and don't need to do anything. It will ask for courage. Courage to appear fully, without diminishing yourself, without hiding behind the false humility of someone who pretends not to have gifts so they don't have to use them. The connection that is coming will invite you into a larger space, and entering that space will require you to occupy the place that is yours without apology. It will ask for transparency, not unnecessary exposure, not airing problems without discretion, but the willingness to be truly seen, to not build a facade that everything is fine when it is not, to trust that the recognition this person has for you is robust enough to handle your authenticity. It will ask for faithfulness to the process, because even if the arrival of this connection accelerates many things, the destiny will still have a process, and there will be moments of doubt, of impatience, of temptation to force things that need time. Faithfulness to the process, the willingness to trust God's rhythm even when it seems too slow, will be fundamental, and it will ask for generosity. What you receive through this connection is not to stay only with you. It is to flow. It is to be multiplied. The people God chooses to bless greatly are those with a heart large enough that the blessing does not stop with them. Be generous with what you receive, not with recklessness, but with intentionality. Use what comes to you to touch lives beyond your own. We have reached the most important point of everything said so far, and I want to speak directly to you, not to a generic audience. I know you are tired. I know there were moments when you looked at your life and thought you should have done differently, chosen differently, gone another way. I know there are days when faith is there, firm, and days when it is more like an ember than a flame. I know there are people who looked at you and underestimated you, that there were doors that closed in your face, that there were opportunities that seemed to pass by without seeing you, and yet you are here. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the most important qualification of all. You did not give up. You are still standing. You still believe, even if with wounds, even if with doubts, even if with weariness. You are still looking up. God saw every night you spent alone questioning, saw every tear you held back so as not to worry those you love, saw every moment when you had every reason to become bitter and chose, even at a high cost, not to let the pain turn you into something different from what you were called to be. None of that was in vain. Every disappointment was a school. Every betrayal was a filter. Every season of silence was formation. And the result of all this is a version of you that is ready to receive and sustain what is coming. The person coming your way will see you, not the edited version you present online, not the facade version you use when you are insecure, but the real you, with your depth, with your story, with attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.